Hey everyone, welcome back to Top Card Journey. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the One Piece card game, Heroines Battle, and we're going to be doing an immediate tier list to help you prepare for these Heroines Battle. Before we begin, please give this video a like because it really helps out the algorithm, and historically, a lot of my videos get a good amount of views, but they just don't get a lot of likes, so I would really appreciate it if you guys could give this video a like right now, help with the algorithm. So for those that don't know what this Heroines Battle is, essentially it's going to be a special event where we can only play these heroines leaders in celebration of EBO3, which obviously had the heroines set. So these are all the leaders are legal in this tournament. Before we go into the tier list, which is right here, I'm just going to say that this blue Nami and this red Shanks represents the red Uta as well as the blue Nami promo that is not available on this tier list maker. So they will just be used as a proxy for the time being. Okay, so let's start off with Vivi. So Vivi's ability allows her to essentially rest her character and minus 2k on your opponent's characters, and then allow a character that you played on that turn to gain rush. Obviously, it cannot have a when attacking effect, and one of the most effective ways you can play Vivi is to play 10 cost Shanks from OPO6, which KOs a 10k power or below character, and you can also give it rush. So essentially, you can have a very tempo and control style Vivi deck. The whole game plan is essentially you want to play out bodies such as 10 cost Shanks, such as 7 cost Beckman, which removes a body on the opponent's field, and then also have a rush effect. So it's essentially a more aggro version of Red Shanks in a way from OPO9. I think this leader is actually quite good, and as a result, we're going to be putting her in the good tier. I think where she comes in short is against removal leaders that don't really care about KO protection. So another part that I didn't mention was her KO protection part, which means a character with a base cost of 4 or more would be KO'd. You may trash one card from your hand instead. So generally this works because you will play out a 5 cost Vivi, which plays out a 5 cost or less, which generally you want to target the 5 cost Nami either in red or the 5 cost Nami in blue. The game plan behind this is when your opponent swings really tall, let's say 15k or even 10k, you can block with either the Vivi blocker or the Nami blocker, and when it dies because it is KO'd in battle, you can trash a random brick or some random card from your hand to essentially block an attack. So it allows Vivi to stay more healthy. However, her downside is that a lot of decks now have, and even in the past, have removal that's not KO. For example, we have blue yellow Boa, we have blue yellow Nami, we have green Bonnie, which doesn't have removal, but it has freeze, and essentially, all these decks that revolve around resting and also removal that isn't KO, such as bottom decking, such as bouncing, such as removing to life, etc., or even trashing, um, all of these removal tools will make it so that her first ability isn't as good. So I think Vivi is actually pretty good in this format, but definitely not a top deck. Next, we're going to be ranking OPO3 Charlotte Linlin. Charlotte Linlin is a leader that is in the black and yellow. And its leader effect is when you have 2 Dawn attached to your leader, when attacking, you must rest 2 more Dawn, and you can trash 1 card from your hand, and if you have 1 or less life, you may heal 1 from the top of your life. Now, the issue with Big Mom is that um, she's never really had a very strong package with black, yellow, Big Mom, and she's never been meta. She's literally never been meta, even from release. And I just can't imagine her being good in this format. She does have access to 10 Mom, which is a positive, however, which does very well into yellow decks in general, as well as Blue Nami, which we'll talk about later, but it does very well into these yellow decks. However, With that being said, I don't think she will do very well in this Heroines Battle. Next, we have OPO4 Vivi. This leader cannot attack, and its activate main is you may rest 2 Dawn to draw 1 card, and one of your characters on board gains Rush. So this is a very similar playstyle to the other Vivi in EBO3. However, because of the fact that you need to rest 2 Dawn in order to gain and give a character Rush, it actually limits some of the cards that you can play in this deck. And essentially, it is a weaker version of the other EBO3 Vivi, in my opinion. Because although you can, for example, play Ben Beckman with Rush, you have to pay another 2 cards, or 2 Dawn rather, in order to give it Rush. Yes, you do draw a card, which means hand size is less of a problem. However, I think that you would rather have a 10 cost Shanks from OPO6, which pops something, removes something, and gets Rush. So in my opinion, this has a little less board control and a little bit more card draw, which means it might be a bit safer in terms of card draw, but it's less control style, which I think is quite important in this format. So as a result, I think I'll be putting it in the okay territory. I don't think it's terrible, but I don't think it's great either. Next on the list, we have Rebecca. In OPO4, they introduced 2 leaders that cannot attack. Activate main once per turn, you may rest 1 Dom, and if you have 6 or less cards in hand, you may look at the top 2 cards of your deck and reveal up to 1 Dressrosa card and add it to hand, and trash the rest. Rebecca was sort of a very meta deck at the time, no Pure 4. However, I just don't think this leader can catch up to some of the leaders that we have. Rebecca was a very annoying deck to deal with because at the time, there weren't a lot of ways to get around removal protection. So Rebecca's whole gimmick is basically surrounding Kyros, and also you can also place certain removal cards, removal options, such as playing the Toy Soldier, and then removing it with other removal cards in hand, as well as Kyros, because Kyros basically, if it gets killed, you can rest your leader or you can rest your stage in order to keep it alive, which means it was very hard to get rid of Kyros. But I feel like in today's meta, um, it just won't survive because it's not defensive enough. So against some other leaders that we're gonna see, such as Bello Betty, such as Reiju, such as even Purple Yellow Pudding, um, newer leaders like OP14 Boa, Green Uta. There's just too many matchups where it's just not good and you'll just get rushed down a lot. So I will put it in the bad category. Next, we have Bello Betty. I think Bello Betty is a very fun leader, but I don't know if it will be insanely good, and we're going to talk about it now. Activate main once per turn, you may trash 1 Revolutionary Army card from hand, and up to 3 of your Revolutionary Army type characters or characters with a trigger gains plus 3000 power during this turn. So Bello Betty has always been known as probably the most aggressive deck in One Piece. And I think it continues to be probably one of the most, if not the most aggressive deck in One Piece. With that being said, however, I think it actually falls short in this meta where we have more of a control style as well as a healing style sort of leader. Bella Betty has always struggled with very defensive decks such as Yellow Enel, such as even Blue Yellow Nami, and obviously in this format we don't have Nell, but we do have Blue Yellow Nami, we do have Blue Boa, we do have Green Bonnie, certain very control heavy style decks, which are very good into Bella Betty. Now, I do think Bella Betty does quite well into other non-defensive leaders that we'll talk about later, but I think it's only deserving of an okay spot. I think if we have Green Bonnie, we have Blue Boa, we have Blue Yellow Nami, we even have um, Blue Yellow Boa, which do very, very well into aggro because Blue Yellow Boa wants to be hit, and other leaders are very controlly. I think because of that, Bella Betty might fall short into some of the better decks in the format, but if you can get good matchups into other leaders, there's a good possibility you can still do fine. So in this format, I'll only give it an okay.
Hey guys, I just want to say if you're enjoying this video, please give this video a like and subscribe.
Next, we have OPO6 Uta. Now, I think OPO6 Uta can potentially be not bad in this format, but it really depends on whether or not it sees the leaders they want to see. So essentially, Uta's whole gimmick is trashing film cards in order to ramp. Actually, let me read the leader effect first. When attacking, you may trash one film card from your hand, give up to your opponent's characters minus 2000 during this turn, then add up to one Don from your Don deck and rest it. So essentially, Ucha's whole gimmick is to trash film cards from your hand and then minus 2k power on the enemy's board and then ramp a Don. So the reason why I think it could be okay in this meta is because the whole gimmick of Uta is essentially ramping to 10 and then dropping a lot of big bodies. And I think it could be a decently effective strategy, especially against some leaders like Blue Yellow Nami, which struggle with dealing with big bodies very early on. And I think it will be okay as a result. So, with all that said, basically, yeah, I'm putting it in okay. I don't think it will be insanely good, because I personally think there's another leader in this that does a similar thing to what red, purple Uta wants to do, but is a little bit more consistent and better into more matchups. So we'll talk about that later. Anyways, next we have Perona. Perona's activate main once per turn. You may choose either to rest up to one of your opponents with a cost of 4 or less, or give up to one of your opponents -1 cost during this turn. Perona is very accurate to the colors that she represents, which is green and black. The first leader effect being a green leader effect, and the second one being a black leader effect. With that being said, I personally don't think Perona is amazing. I have seen two of my friends practicing this deck, but I don't think it's that good personally. The whole gimmick behind Perona is essentially you want to rest a 4 cost, and then you play Rumor, which pops a 4 cost that's rested. So you gain a bit of tempo that way, and you need to know that interaction. But without Gecko Moria from OPO6, I just don't think this leader can give enough pressure to build a board quickly and wide enough to swing and kill you. I just can't see this leader being good. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to put this in the bad tier. Next, we have Green Yellow Yamato from OPO6. Its leader effect reads double attack. So when you deal damage to an opponent's life, they take 2 damage rather than the standard 1 life. Activate main. If your opponent has 3 or less life cards, you may give up to 2 rested Don to one of your characters. So Yamato got a good amount of support in its last starter deck and as well in EVO 3. I personally think Yamato is actually quite decent in this upcoming meta in this EVO 3 format with the support that's gotten in EVO 3. Yamato is probably quite decent. I think it does quite well into some of the more defensive decks as well because of the fact that you can play out Hody Jones, you can play out DMG, and you're just very aggressive and you have a lot of banish, and you really want to guard the swings from Yamato because of this double attack and because it's usually banish double attack. Um, and they have new cards such as the new EVO 3 Yamato, which essentially means that when you attack into that Yamato and it dies, you trash a life. So you don't really want to remove that character most of the time. And I personally think Yamato is actually quite decent, so I'm going to rank it a good in this tier list. Next up, we have OPO6 Reiju. Its leader effect reads that your turn, once per turn, when a Don card on your field is returned to your Don deck, you draw a card. Personally, I think Reiju is going to be pretty decent, potentially good. I haven't fully decided yet, but I think Reiju is going to be potentially quite good, or at least decent, because there's a lot of good Reiju players that just know how to pilot the deck very consistently. It's a very consistent deck because of the amount of searches, cycling that you have. And the game plan of Reiju is pretty unique. And so as a result, I think it would be quite good. Looking at our tier list, I think it definitely is not deserving of a bad spot. Definitely not. I think it could be better than some of these leaders. So for now, I'll put it at the top end of okay, potentially at the bottom end of good. Um, I think the issue with Reiju is against Blue Yellow Boa. Because it's 7k leader, it might be hard to punch into Boa or punch into Nami. You can go very wide, especially if you play things like the 8 cost. I forgot the dad's name. Judge. Vince Smoke Judge. So I think if you play Judge, you can go very wide, which could be potentially really good into certain matchups. Especially matchups that you want to go aggressive into, for example, into this Vivi or into this Rebecca, or even into this Perona. You want to be very aggressive. But I think that there aren't that many very tall bodies that Reiju plays. So unfortunately, I don't know if I can put it any higher than OK at this moment because it goes very wide, but it doesn't go very tall. So I think it can be very good into certain leaders, but it will fall short against leaders such as Blue Yellow Nami, which is just a 7k base leader essentially if you trash one card. So yeah. Next up we have OPO7 Jewelry Bonnie. Bonnie is actually, fun fact, my first ever leader that I pulled from a box, the alt leader. And I think Bonnie has always consistently been one of the best green decks in pretty much every format, just because of how good the leader effect is. The leader effect is on an opponent's attack once per turn, you may rest up to one of your opponent's leader or character cards by resting one of your Don when your opponent attacks. Jory Bonnie over its release has gotten a lot of support. Obviously, it got her own starter deck, the Bonnie starter deck. And just throughout the metas, Green Bonnie has always just played a lot of very strong green cards in her arsenal. And because of how flexible she is, and how I think she's going to deal with the meta, I can see her being a top deck in the meta. And definitely a deck to beat. She can play a very control heavy style while also having very strong aggressive options on Bonnie, playing things like 9 cost Zoro or even 9 cost Shanks for more control style. I think she's just really, really strong. The only downside to Bonnie is that I think she's quite weak to Blue Yellow Nami, especially a more control style Blue Yellow Nami, where you play things like Nojiko, you play things like Red Rock, you play things like Gravblade. And I think that Bonnie and traditionally green has always felt short to removal heavy decks. Now, if we look at this current tier list, there aren't that many strong removal decks. There's Vivi, which is a pretty strong removal deck. There is, and that's pretty much it. I can only really see this Vivi being a very strong removal deck, and Blue Yellow Nami, which we'll talk about later. But there aren't that many black decks that are girls. I just realized all three of these decks here are the only black decks um, that's going to be available, and so these aren't even removal heavy black decks either. So as a result, I think Bonnie will do really well. She's traditionally done very well into aggro, so things like Bello Betty, things like Reiju, these are not going to do very well into Bonnie. And Bonnie still has access to Ecos Kid. And yeah, so I think Bonnie is definitely one of the decks to beat. Next, we have Boa Hancock from OPO7. Its leader effect reads, during your turn, this effect can be activated when a character is removed from the field by your effects. If you have 5 or less cards, draw 1 card. Now, Boa is a very removal heavy sort of control style deck. Historically, it's been very good into sort of aggressive decks because of the fact that you can freeze a lot of characters with your 6 cost Boa. You can Red Rock, you have access to Gravblade. So Boa's always been quite good just into all these decks that essentially play a lot of low cost stuff. So I think Boa will be quite good, and it's very similar to Bonnie. But I think it's a little better into yellow decks, like Bonnie. Bonnie is better into yellow decks, not Boa, because into yellow decks which just keep burning your life, you'll eventually go to zero life, and they can just swing your face really hard, and you'll lose a lot of cards in hand. So green has access to Kid, which means I think Boa is a worse version of what Bonnie wants to achieve. So as a result, I will put her in good. I think she's a decent leader. She has decent matchups into a lot of aggressive decks. And your whole game plan is to bottom deck stuff, to control the board and build a board, playing things like 9 cost, Mihawk, removing characters because it's a 7 Warlords card. You can play things like 7 cost Doflamingo, bounce cards back to their hand. You can play things like 6 cost Boa, which essentially makes so your opponent can't attack with a certain character. So your whole game plan is just building boards, removing characters, and essentially very strong control deck, which does very good into aggro. Carrot. OPO8 Carrot reads activate main once per turn if you have a mixed type character, rest up to one of your characters, your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. So honestly, I don't know how good Carrot is at the moment. I can foresee her being quite good in the meta just because, firstly, she's a control style leader, which does very good into aggro, which I've talked about, which I personally think is the plan going forwards, is to play a more control style deck. However, because it does fold to a lot of removal decks, I can't see it being insanely good. I personally think she will struggle against Blue Bowler, which is a control style deck, but it can essentially remove characters as well. I can see Carrot losing to control style decks that have removal, right? Not just resting, but removal. And so I personally can foresee her being okay, at the top of okay, potentially in good. I think she can fit there though. I think that's a fair assumption to make. Next, we have Purple Yellow Pudding from OPO8. The leader effect reads when attacking, you may turn 2 of your cards from the top of your life face up, and you may add 1 Don card from your Don deck and rest it. So essentially, when you attack, you can ramp 1 Don if you show the top 2 cards of your life. So, the problem with Pudding is that Pudding's really easy to play around um, depending on what cards they're playing. You don't want to give them triple ramp when they go first, and you can play around it oftentimes if you don't attack into them early on to give them that opportunity to triple ramp. Obviously, depends on sort of the deck they're playing. So I think it's a very skill check, knowledge check playing into Pudding because their game plan to triple ramp is very good. Triple ramping versus double ramping when you're going first as Pudding changes the game plan a lot. Because if you double ramp, you go to 9 Don, whereas if you triple ramp, you go to 10 Don. And when you go to 10 Don, you just spam a lot of 10 cost Pudding, so 10 cost Big Moms, whether it's purple or yellow Big Mom. Um, Purple gives you rush, and 10 Mom trashes their life and you heal one. So there is a big difference when you triple ramp versus you double ramp only. With that being said, I think Pudding can actually be quite good just because of the game plan of Pudding. If we look at the leaders here, there aren't any 6k leaders that I can see. I don't think there are any 6k leaders. I think every leader here is a 5k leader, which means it's a lot better. Let me just double check. Yeah, so there are no 6k leaders here. All the leaders are 5k leaders, which means that you can play 7 cost Pudding into 8 cost Katakuri, and go really wide and tall at the same time. So I think because of that, Pudding can go wide and tall and has a good amount of card draw from that 7 cost Pudding from PRBO2, I think it was. I can see her being quite good. It's just that if people know how to play against Pudding, the matchups get a little worse. Because it has access to Tenmom, it does very good into Blue Nami, the promo Blue Nami. It does very good into yellow decks in general, so Blue Yellow Nami. It does very good into Blue Yellow Pudding. And because it can go very tall as well as very wide, it essentially means that you can play into these more defensive leaders, such as Blue Yellow Nami, such as Blue Yellow Boa, such as Blue Nami. So you can play into a lot of the defensive leaders by being very tall and very wide at the same time, because you can go very wide and tall, and because you can ramp, you can start dropping big bodies earlier than some of the defensive decks can set up. So I would put her in a good category. If we were to rank these, I would put her potentially here. Um, I think she's definitely really good, but there is also a skill slash knowledge check into Pudding. If you don't know what she does, you will probably fold her a lot more often. Next, we have Lim from OPO9. So its leader effect reads that your characters that are played come in as rested. Activate May, you may rest 3 Don and add up to one Don from your Don deck and rest it, and play up to one Odyssey character with a cost of 5 or less from your hand. So Odyssey Lim is the probably the one of the most wide decks in this format, I would assume. Um, because of how wide Lim goes, it can be very annoying for um, some decks, but I don't think it's a best deck because a lot of her swings aren't that tall, especially into like Blue Yellow Nami. I think she'll fold to Blue Yellow Nami. Um, and looking at everything else that's available, she obviously doesn't do very good into like Green Bonnie. So I think she just kind of follows a lot of the control heavy decks. She's just not fast enough. She's not as fast as Bello Betty, which means you're a worse version of a few of the aggro decks that are available here. It does have access to like 10, what do you call it? 10 Shanks, which restands all your Don, which could be quite good. Potentially they might play Nycot Zora, because you really need to have some top end to actually make Lim work in this meta. But yeah, I just don't really foresee it doing that well, so I'm gonna put her on bad. Uh, Top of bad, to be fair, because I don't think she's terrible, but I just can't foresee her being very good. Next, we have Nico Robin from OPO9. Her leader effect reads that she has Banish, which means when you attack into the opponent's life, that card goes to trash and does not activate a trigger. So that means that oftentimes you want to defend swings from Nico Robin because it has Banish. When attacking, you may also trash one card from hand which has a trigger, and you can ramp one Don. So Nico Robin, I think, let's actually have a look here. I'm not sure where it would go, to be honest. So I'm going to put her here for now while I think. So Nico Robin probably does quite well into yellow decks in general because a lot of yellow decks rely on triggers, such as Boa, so I think it will do very well into Boa. And even in the standard format, there were a lot of, not a lot, but there was a good amount of players that were playing Robin to specifically counter Boa in the OP14 Eastern meta format. That being said, I don't think it was ever that good because it just folded to every other matchup. And that's OP14 standard format. We're not talking about that, but I just wanted to add a bit of lore, add a bit of history in terms of this deck. Um, let's see. I just don't see it being that good. I don't think Robin's top end is really that insane. So I would put her in bad, maybe better than these leaders here. I think Pudding is just a better version of Robin in terms of what you're trying to do. Your whole game plan is essentially just to ramp and play bodies out. It's very similar to a Nell's play style in a way, which I think potentially is okay. I think I'll put her at okay, but I think Pudding just does what she wants to do and better. So, and she's more defensive as well. So I think Robin is definitely worse off. Next, we have OP10 Sugar. Leader effect reads that if you have a Don Quixote Pirates type character with 6k power or more, you can set up to one of your donors active at the end of your turn. Opponent's turn, when you activate an event, add up to one card from your Don deck and set as active. So Sugar is sort of similar to RP Uta, where you kind of just want to ramp and then play big bodies. I mean that's sort of red purple in a nutshell. Is you just ramp, 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 and then play red, swing, swing, rush, swing, rush, swing, rush. Um, Personally, I can see RP Sugar being okay. It's again another one of those skill check decks where you don't really want to swing into them early for them to activate events on your turn, because that's how they ramp. They could literally play a Searcher on your turn and ramp it on. So generally, you don't want to attack into Sugar as a result of that. Um, and yeah, like there isn't really a reason to attack into Sugar and let her ramp in the early to mid game. So I think if people know how to play against Sugar, it's just not going to be great. I think Sugar is a better version of RP Uta in terms of what she's trying to do. So I can't put her below that. I would put her probably around here. I think she's okay. But yeah, again, she probably doesn't do great into like control style decks, I would assume. Um, Honestly, I'm not too sure about this one compared to everything else I've talked about. But yeah, I think she's a bit more defensive um, than RP Uta. But she's also not as consistent in terms of ramp if people know what they're doing. So I'm just going to put her okay for now. Shirahoshi from OP11. This leader cannot attack. Activate main once per turn. You may rest one of your Don cards and play up to and turn one card from the top of your life face up. You may then play up to one Neptunian type character card or Megalo with a cost equal to or less than the number of Don cards on your field from your hand. So Shirahoshi is essentially a aggro board spam sort of leader, but she also has removal protection. Um, as a result of that, I think she could be quite decent, especially into some of the more top tier meta decks. I think she loses to Green Bonnie still, but I think she can beat Blue Yellow Nami just because if you play more of a control variant, it'll be very hard to sort of remove Shira Hiroshi's characters. So I can see her being actually quite good in this meta because she can spam, she can go wide, she can heal. Um, and so I think she does decent into aggro. She can heal. She can play out a lot of big bodies, and she also has anti removal. So I can see her being quite good. I think if I was to rank these, probably I would probably keep it as is. So yeah, let's go next. OP11 Nami. Your turn. Once per turn, this effect can be activated when a card is removed from your or your opponent's life cards. If you have seven or less life cards, you may draw, sorry, seven or less cards in your hand, you may draw a card. Donix 1, on your opponent's attack once per turn, you may trash one card from hand, and this leader gains plus 2000 power during this turn. So essentially, Blue Yellow Nami is a anti aggro deck because you're base 7k. And you can also draw a card when life cards are removed from your life or your opponent's life during your turn. I think Blue Yellow Nami is pretty okay. It's pretty decent. Especially into a lot of the top tier decks that I think will be top tier. So first of all, I'm going to be putting it as the best deck in the format so far. It does very good into Green Bonnie because it can use Nojiko plus Red Rock, and Nojiko plus Red Rock plus Nojiko is just really strong. It's just very strong in terms of being able to control the opponent's board while developing a board in your own, especially with the new EBO3 support from EBO3 Nami as well as EBO3 um, Robin. I can foresee Nami being probably one of the best decks in the format. FYI, this is the deck I'm going to be playing during Heroines Cup. I've done a lot of playtesting into like a bunch of leaders basically, like Green Bonnie, um, Vivi, Yamato, Boa, um, some of these leaders down here as well, like Lim, Pomona, Carrot, Reiju, even like half of these I haven't play tested against, as well as some of these I don't think are very good or haven't. But I think Blue Yellow Army is probably B diff in this format, because it just does very well into a lot of leaders. Especially like Vivi is like super free, for example. I think Bonnie is fairly free as well. Like there's a lot of like decently free matchups for Blue Yellow Nami. So I think as a result, it's just really, really good. I would put it pretty high up. If you guys are interested in my list, I will not be showing it as of yet. I will be showing it closer to the Heroines Battle because I don't really want to expose my list before I've won an event at the Heroines Battle. But I will be showing it in the future, so subscribe and like this video. Please like this video if you haven't already. Yeah, let's move on to the next one. Next up, we have Koala from OB12. Its effect reads, when this leader attacks your opponent's leader, if you have 2 or more characters with a cost of 8 or more, you can draw a card. Once per turn, this effect can be activated when your opponent plays a character base of 8 or more, or when your opponent plays a character using a character's effect. You may add 1 card from the top of their life to their hand. So essentially, this does very well into like decks that play a lot of top end, such as like Green Bonnie, such as Purple Yellow Pudding. And so I can foresee it being pretty good. I'll put it at the top of okay, potentially good. I'll put it at okay for now because essentially Koala falls to a lot of wide decks that can go really, really, really wide. Um, so I can foresee it dying to a lot of like wide decks as well as like control decks, like even Carrot or even Bonnie, honestly. Like you can be at 0 life, but then Bonnie just plays 8 kids, so it doesn't matter. But like yes, Koala can be quite annoying. But I think even like Blue Yellow Nami, for example, can beat Koala because a lot of her drops are like 5 Nami, 7 Boa, sorry, not 7 Boa, seven Robin, which means they're not even A cost. She doesn't have any way to like play out multiple characters like Green Uta does, or even like Green Bonnie can, for example, with Acos Kid. But Acos Kid it's in itself is already Acos or more, so it will activate. But yeah, like I feel like certain leaders that have big bodies uh can still play decently into Koala. So yeah, for now I think she's okay only. Next up, we have OP13 Jewelry Bonnie. Your turn, once per turn, this effect can be activated when when you play a character with a trigger. You can give up to 2 Rested Dawn cards to one of your leaders or character cards. Yellow Bonnie is a aggressive deck, is a rush deck, it's an aggro deck. You can play 9 cost Bonnie, and can get you to 0 life very easily. The only issue with that is that I think she really just falls to a lot of the defensive decks in this meta. So again, we have Green Bonnie, we have ah Green Bonnie, we have that's pretty much it. Honestly, it's just Green Bonnie that's like super defensive. Um, I think even Blue Yellow Nami can potentially fall to her. So I think she's actually like not bad. Because she's yellow instead of like a red deck, she can put you to 0 very easily and then kill you. And I don't think Blue Yellow Nami, unless you play Tenko's Newgate, has a lot of ways to deal with Bonnie. So I think this is heavily dependent on your draws and stuff. Um, so I think it's actually not bad. So I'm actually gonna put it good. Originally in my mind, I was thinking okay, but I think she's actually pretty decent. All right, next we're back to Boa, but this time we're talking about OP14 Boa Hancock. Now, in the standard format, Boa is currently one of the best decks in the format, and I think it's still pretty good. I think Boa is still gonna be very good in this meta. I think it sadly dies to non-KO removal, which is gonna be Mirror. It's gonna be Boa, Blue Boa, and it's gonna be Blue Yellow Nami. So I think I can foresee it being quite good, especially because she does quite decently into like aggressive matchups. She does decently into control matchups. So I can see her being like good. I'll definitely put her up there. Between either Vivi or I think Boas might be a bit better than that. So I'm gonna put her there. Next, we have Starter Deck '07 Linlin. When attacking Donix 2, you may add one card from the top of or bottom of your life to your hand. If you have two or less life cards, you may add up to one card from your hand to the top of your life cards. Yeah, so I'll be completely honest with you guys. Every leader that I've talked about so far, I've played against at least once. But I have never played against a starter deck leader ever. I don't really know how it works at all. So I'm just gonna put it as don't know to be honest. But I can't imagine this leader being very good. So yeah, let's go next. Next, we have Starter Deck '09 Yamato. Donix 1 on your opponent's turn. If you have two or less life cards, this leader gains plus 1k power. So I'm just going to start off by saying it's bad. This Yamato leader effect has always been terrible. Nobody has ever said this Yamato deck is good because it's not good. It's been very bad since the beginning, and I just don't think it will do anything in this format. Its package, its leader effect is just so useless. I don't think it will do any good in this format. Next, we have Starter Deck 11 Uta. So this is technically Starter Deck 11 and 16, but anyways. Donix 1, when attacking once per turn, reveal from the top of your deck and add up to one film card to your hand. Then place the rest at the bottom of your deck. Essentially, how this leader works is when you have Donix 1 on your leader and you swing for 6k, or more if you have more Dawn attached. You show the top card from your deck, and if it's film, you add it to hand. In my opinion, Green Uta is pretty decent because you constantly just attack for 6, and you also have access to both being able to go tall and to go wide. I think versatility in this meta is very important. The ability to go wide, to go tall, and to be good at removal. I think Uta is actually very um, versatile in that aspect. So I actually think Green Uta is actually pretty decent. I can see her being good, just because she has restand event. She has a lot of ways to um, build her deck to go wide, to go tall, um, and also play a bit of control style with nine cost Shanks. Obviously she's not a control deck, she's more of an aggro deck, but for the amount of aggro decks that are in the meta, I think she's probably one of the better ones because you can go very wide like Bello Betty, but you can also go very tall with 9 cost Shanks with the 10 cost Shanks, I think it is. The one that's film and restand all 10-year Dawn. The one 9 cost Shanks I'm talking about KO Shanks, so KO's your opponent's that's rested. Yeah. Okay, so for some reason, Uta isn't on the website that I was on, so I'm just going to be showing you guys this from Google Images. So this leader effect reads that activate main once per turn. If you rest one Dawn up to one of your characters with no base effect, gains plus 2k power during this turn. So I'll be completely honest with you guys, I don't know how good that is. I've never seen Red Uta since it came out. So I'm just gonna put it as don't know to be honest, because I don't know. But I think it'll be bottom of bad. Let's be real. Just based on the leader effect itself, it sounds ass. I've never seen Red Uta in play ever, and it's just too specific for that leader effect to be good. So I just can't see it being good. And you can play Bella Betty if you want to get plus 3k on 3 characters, whereas you need one Dawn plus 2k to one character, and it has to be very specific. So I just can't see it being good. And if you really want to play Uta, you just play RP Uta instead, or even Green Uta. So yeah. Yeah, so for some reason, this blue promo Nami is on the website, but the red Uta isn't. But anyways, promo 117 Nami. Under the rules of the game, you can only include East Blue type cards in your deck. When your deck is reduced to 0, you win the game instead of losing. Donix 1, when this leader attacks, deal damage to your opponent's life. You may trash one card from the top of your deck, and that's it. So the traditional old blue Nami here was obviously a lot better, but I think this blue Nami is still okay.
I just don't see it being very good. I will put it in the okay tier. Um, the only reason why I don't think it can be much higher than this and to be put into good is because there are just certain leaders that just kills Nami. So Nami's weakness is basically life burn because you can't protect that life, it just gets burned. As well as controlled X, things that can like remove your stuff without KOing. So things like Boa, things like Nami, Bonnie even, I think will just kill Nami, especially if Bonnies and Utas and Yamatos they play banish stuff or Narcot Zoro. Um, I think it'll just kill Nami. I have not lost to Blue Nami yet as Blue Yellow Nami, and I've played multiple games. It's not like I've played one game. I've played multiple games, and I've not lost to Blue Nami yet. I do play a bit of Life Burn, obviously. That's what Blue Yellow Nami does nowadays. But also the fact that I have control. I can remove like Boodle, which obviously if you protects with it, Boodle is very strong because it's a blocker, which means you can block an attack, but it also trashes one card, which helps you progress your game plan as Nami. I think a lot of people haven't played into Blue Nami recently, which I haven't either until the Heroines Battle. I've been playtesting against it. I just don't think it's that good. I think it's okay. But yeah, guys, this is my overall tier list. Please give this video a like, as I said many, many times. But I do think that these two decks will be the best deck in the format.